Hi everyone, it's Cyndi again. And wow, chills, and I haven't even introduced you to my guest, who you've already met, I'm sure, because he's another one of our hosts on the Awareness podcast. This is the fifth edition of the Living in Oneness Experience podcast. So far, in case you've missed them, we began with the invitation, the calling into. If you're here, no matter what you believe your life is like right now, you're here because you've been called into something new, a new awareness. And in our first edition, Rana Marin and I talked about that calling, that invitation, what it could look like, and invited us all to say yes to that. And then in the second edition, we talked about the goal. Like once we say yes to this invitation, knowing what it is we're saying yes to helps us as we go on the path. And Linda Yamin and I really talked about that goal, and she gave us some great tips on how to reset when we lose ourselves. And then Cyndi, my beautiful friend Cyndi, and I talked about the pause, and which is, and I still laugh about it because those of us in the Living in Oneness experience, many of us think it's the hardest thing to do, to step back, to do nothing, to rest in consciousness, in peace, and allow the problem we think has been coloring us to dissolve on its own. And then last month, I was blessed to talk to one of the founders of the Living in Oneness experience, the other being Bill here, and we talked about symbols. We talked about words and how we could get lost in those words and what it is that happens when we step underneath those words and rest in the truth. And now we get to talk to Bill Free, my friend, the founder of Pure Presence Productions and co-founder of the Teachers of God Foundation, and one of the two creators of the Living in Oneness experience. Hi, Bill.
Hey, namaste.
So before we get started on this crazy hour where we're going to talk about what it looks like to go from fundamentalism to the Living in Oneness experience, I'm wondering if you could take a few minutes and give people your elevator speech. Let's say you have about 60 seconds to tell people who you are and what you're about and what you want to leave them with.
Hmm.
You want to give us what
I don't
that
know.
is?
I don't know about an elevator speech. I want to pick up, but I say yes to that. But I want to pick up on something you said when we opened, and that is that in this podcast that you have been called to be here, and I just want to clarify that because it sounds like something else is calling us, and actually you called you. You, I am, you presence, you, your essential self, called yourself to this experience. And it wasn't some other outside entity, it was you. And I just want to kind of clarify that so that people know that this isn't some, when I first, and I'm going to talk about fundamentalism in a minute, Christian fundamentalism, because when I first got involved in Christian fundamentalism and I saw people, kind of walking up to the stage of Billy Graham and doing that whole thing, I thought, holy moly, what are these people in some kind of a trance? And so it's not that kind of a calling either. It's our essential self as the presence of I am of spirit. Many may know that idea, the idea that there is a spirit, but it's not spirit in a like spirits. There's only one being. There's only one presence. There's only one God. It's love itself calls us back to itself. And a little bit about myself, other than, I started out in life as uh, in the life that I knew as a teenager, as a bit of a seeker, a drug seeker, seeking happiness in the form of drugs and alcohol, and then later on Christianity, and then after that, A Course in Miracles, and then the non-dual understanding is what ended the search for Bill Free. And I love the truth. I'm a lover of truth, no longer a seeker of truth, because I know what truth is, and I know that we all inherently, all of us, are seeking the same thing. We're looking for happiness, mostly in the beginning, in all the wrong places, but we're essentially seeking the happiness to know the self. And it's been what I have been about my entire life. Even though it was on drugs at first, I was seeking for happiness, and then as a Christian, when I found out about Jesus, the man, I was seeking after, tell me more about that guy. And I wanted to know more about his journey, what everybody was talking about in this big, thick Bible. I wanted to know what that was all about. And so I have been a fundamentalist for a long time, and I guess until the search was over, I was still a fundamentalist. Fundamentalist, not as a Christian, not. Actually, when I found A Course in Miracles, I became a Course in Miracles fundamentalist, because it takes all the words all the ideas that come to you, it takes them literally, and even the metaphysics of teachings it takes literally, and it's looking for, for manifest physical experiences, like the Bible, which is sorry, Bible followers, it's completely misinterpreted, completely uh, not what you think it is. But it took a long time for me to see that and to understand it. And yet, that draw is the power of wanting to know what you are. That the energy that draws a fundamentalist to be a fundamentalist is this attraction to just focused on one thing. And the one thing that I wanted, I just initially just wanted to be happy. But then when I found out about Jesus and in the Bible, I thought, well, maybe that's what I'm missing. I'm missing the Bible. That'll
So,
make
Bill,
me,
yeah.
yeah.
So, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I've heard some of these stories and I know a little bit about how they shifted my understanding of some things. So, I would love, if you don't mind, if you could talk just very specifically. Let's take it just for a few minutes, the steps. We know that as a teenager or a young man, that you sought your happiness very much in the world and in pleasure and drugs and alcohol. That's the way you put it. And there are many people of all ages that are still there. And then talk about that moment where you thought that Jesus was the answer. Could you put yourself back there for a moment? Because even though Jesus, ultimately, the Christian faith fundamentalist wasn't the answer, it still lit up something new in you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, initially I was afraid of the religious Christian stuff, and went don't bring the Jesus stuff around me. But I was a single parent and had a 2-year old that I was raising. I wanted to raise her not like me. I wanted her to be raised in a better experience, and I knew I needed to let go of drugs and alcohol to be a good father. And so I started hopping around different kinds of churches, all kinds of different churches. And that wasn't the answer either. And I found myself in the Bahamas, and there was a Billy Graham crusade. So I thought, well, I'm going to go to that. So I went to this Billy Graham crusade in Nassau, Bahamas. I think I was about 27 years old. So it was a long time ago. And I was standing there listening to Billy Graham. You know, he said a few things that, that I've heard before on the television. But I started seeing all these people walk to the stage on his what's called an altar call to accept Jesus as their personal savior. And I thought, "Ooh, this is weird. Are these people in a trance or something?" And it really caused me to want to have a Bible. So I bought a Bible, and I bought all the Bible on tapes, on cassette tapes. I bought a player. I'm listening to the Bible, and I'm opening it and reading it for the first time because I was interested in what was their attraction. And then I was I wanted to be baptized, so there was a big Billy Graham group that my father had organized the Billy Graham team to one of the big hotels on Paradise Island where Howard Hughes actually stayed. And we had a big banquet of about 70 of the Gideons on the island of Nassau, of the Bahamas. And so we had this big gathering, big dinner, singing. My dad had a beautiful voice. He knew some Bible hymns, and he sang, and I met ministers, Gideon ministers, and they were going to have a baptism. My father's girlfriend wanted to be baptized, and her best friend wanted to be baptized. So I said, I want to be baptized. So I went with the three of them, and I was baptized in the ocean right there in the Bahamas, and I accepted Jesus as my Savior. I thought, coming out of the water, this dove was going to land on my shoulder, accepting the Holy Spirit or some craziness. Because I'd read a little bit by that time about Jesus's conversion and the Holy Spirit. It was likened to the Holy Spirit landing on his shoulder. So I was looking for this bird to land on my shoulder. That didn't happen, but something happened. I don't know what happened, but when I came out of the water, I threw my pack of cigarettes away. I said, I'm not drinking anymore. I'm not going to smoke anymore. I'm not drinking anymore. I'm not going to take drugs anymore. All of a sudden, I had this epiphany that said I was done with that old self. So something caused me to be baptized, which is where you leave the old self under the water and you arise as a Christ conversion or Christ something. At the time, I didn't really know what it was, but it changed me. And it was just a few days after that, I was looking in the back of the Bible, this brand new Bible that I bought, and it had in the back it has maps of Jerusalem and the ancient geography, but I focused on Jerusalem and where Jesus walked, and I thought, if that guy really was there, I want to go where he went. I want to go and touch the ground where he walked. So I kind of dismissed that idea, and then I took a flight from Nassau to Miami overnight. It's only I stayed overnight. It's only a 30-minute flight, but I was flying over, and I thought I'm gonna go where Jesus went, and I want to go where this place is on the map. And so when I landed, I went up to the TWA counter. This was in 1981. I went up to the TWA counter, and I had a bunch of unused refundable tickets that were my father's tickets that he bought, never went to the location. So I just took them all. And I had his same name, so I took him to the counter. I said, "Hey, I'm him," and I made turned those tickets into a round trip ticket to Tel Aviv, to Israel, and I went back to the Bahamas. I made arrangements for my daughter to be babysat by a neighbor down the street. I rented a house there, and I had my daughter had made friends with the neighbor across the street. Her mother was one of the operators in the hotel that I'd been living in for a couple of months, and her mother said she would take care of her while I went to Israel. So I got on a TWA Airlines and I went to the place where Jesus was. I wanted to really have a visceral connection with the story that I'm now reading about Jesus. So that's another, obsession, kind of a fundamentalist obsession.
So, so just and from my understanding, because I love your story. For X number of years, you just fully immersed yourself into believing that that light, that that energy you were feeling came specifically through this fundamental Christian belief. And you created a life for a little while that way, and
Yep.
then something happened. Could you talk about when you the moment or the moments when you knew that the energy might be right, but the church isn't fulfilling um, what was happening in you.
Well, yeah, I was really I was devoted to the Christian path. I still am grateful. I'm happy that I was drawn to that path because it did take away the interest in drugs, alcohol, being, partying. It did cause me to be responsible, and I did feel that it was correcting my behavior in a very positive way, so that I was a good father. I did remarry, and I was a good husband, and it did teach me how to be a better person. So I love that part of it. And in it, about 20 years, I didn't like the part about it where, we were better than everyone else. And if you're gay, oh my God, you're totally screwed. And so it was the gay part, because when I would drive to church, leaving my house, I would drive right by a gay church that had a pretty full parking lot, and we had a parking lot that was 40 times the size of theirs, but they had a pretty full parking lot. And I would drive by that gay church going, I wonder what they do in there. If they don't, if they're abomination to the Bible or to God, what are they doing in church? And so I really was kind of lost in that idea. I didn't understand how God, which is love, could have an abomination, and how people who are seeking after God can be an abomination to God. So that part right there was a great big tripper for me, a good one, a good tripper, because it didn't add up. And when it created enough doubt so that when someone suggested that I read something about Ernest Holmes or the science of the mind, and what happened was someone suggested that I read Gary Renard's Disappearance of the Universe, which points directly to A Course in Miracles. And when I opened up the course and I started reading some of the corrections that Jesus, the voice or the consciousness that inspired the course, said, no, I couldn't have said that because I didn't believe in that. And so I started looking at these corrections that were right there in A Course in Miracles, and every one of them made sense that the Bible wasn't totally correct. And then the more I got into the course, the more I didn't even want to look at the Bible again. And so that was the beginning of moving from fundamentalist Christianity to fundamentalist A Course in Miracles.
And you really did. You walked away from the church and you left your home, right? You left your church and you went traveling. I believe you spent some time in a group that just studied the course, and you spent some time with Regina. And is there anything about that particular experience you want to talk about until we have you go from there to maybe your time with Muji? I mean, you really did fully immerse in seeking truth, right?
Yeah, I mean, from the very beginning, I was obsessed with truth. I was hungry. By this time, I was so excited that the course was what that the Bible. I was excited that the Bible was wrong, but it was kind of true. You know, it was pointing us. It's pointing humanity back to God, even though it's doing it. You know, it's all messed up. It's pointing and it's holding humanity in this space, or it held it in a space of morality and good things and really pointing to God. And I like that part of it. And fundamentalist Course in Miracles students, they do the same thing with the courses I did with the Bible. And I did the same. I went to Ken Wapnick, who was the foremost teacher of our time of the content of A Course in Miracles. So I became one of his students, and after about a year, I realized, oh my God, I'm a fundamentalist Course in Miracles student. So I started opening myself up to other teachings in the non-dual realm. I just loved Muji, so I wanted to know more about Muji. About 5 years into the course, I flew to London, met Muji. He invited me to Portugal, where he had just purchased the land for his ashram, and I lived there in a tent on the land and became one of his followers. And now and then, I mean, I'm still one of his friends. I love his teaching. His teaching is still relevant to, in fact, it's much closer to the truth of what A Course in Miracles points to than the Course is. So I really started following Advaita Vedanta, the non-dual path, the non-dual understanding of our oneness. And I've been to Portugal several times, and I'll go back again. I've been in communication with Muji's team, the same team that was there in 2011 when I met him, is there today. And I've been in contact with them in the last month. And when they open the ashram back up, I'll probably go back and visit Muji and see him again and just love on his presence. He's I don't do the guru thing, but I love that guy. He's just so authentic, and he's just he just emanates the truth of the pointing.
So before we get closer to where you are with Rupert and then living in oneness and the merging, I am inspired to ask one other question related to the story so far. When you stepped out of the water and you were baptized, you did feel a shift. And when you sit in Muji's presence, or going to a satsang, or sitting in the teachings with Rupert Spira, you can feel that too. I wonder, from where you are right now, what is it? What do you think is the same, and what maybe do you think is the difference between that moment of stepping out of the water and having some sort of, because from the way you describe it, and because I know even, Lisa will say the same thing about A Course in Miracles, right? She gave up smoking, she gave up drinking as a result of saying yes to the Course. you just related the same thing to something that happened when you said yes in that baptism. Now, with what you know and understand about consciousness, they're pointing as to what was going on underneath, or what the truth of what it was that had you say no to a life that wasn't serving into something else. If it wasn't Christianity, or it wasn't the Course, or it wasn't the specific way Mooji talks.
Well, first of all, it wasn't Mooji's presence that it was his pointing. What he was pointing to is what attracted me. And then he's an awesome guy. I mean, he's just, you just want to be around him. He's just awesome. And the relationship between to Mooji, finding the Course, Mooji, that experience coming out of the water, none of it's related to Bill. Bill is just a vessel, just a puppet that consciousness is using to remember itself. And there was a desire that I had to know God, and that little spark is what drew me to want to see Billy Graham. It's the spark that drew me to say I want to be baptized. It's the spark, and in that light experience, that where consciousness is remembering itself. He's just a play. It's not even Bill anymore. It's consciousness remembering itself, and Bill gets the benefit of being more interested in the light than being interested in the objects of experience. So when you look at it from reflecting back, I can see where consciousness was just awakening even at the very beginning, and it was using the forms that I would accept and understand to spark that interest. And first, Bill's behavior needed to change. So Christianity did that. It took away all those, my young years of being on my own, being, not having a great family life, not having great teaching from, parents that really knew how to teach children. So the behavior thing was first, and while the behavior thing was being fixed, A Course in Miracles is being written, is being scribed. So it was just, it's just a progression of consciousness waking itself up, and Bill the bodysuit is changing his experience as a listening occurs from this place that I knew not of at the time. I didn't know all of these things at the time that they were occurring. I'm looking back and saying, okay, that makes sense.
And chills. I always know that there's a shift in this body when there's chills. Literally, my whole body is feeling chills, because that's the experience I have in listening to your story, and that's why I feel blessed and grateful that you agreed to tell it. From where I'm sitting, there's just this understanding again that the actual details of the story don't really matter, right? They're all what makes the movie interesting, perhaps. It was just as you were saying it was sinking in. It was consciousness almost dissolving the different attachments. Last month, Lisa and I talked about symbols/idols, this idea of us believing it's something in the world that's making us feel better. It from your story, that consciousness used the beautiful, structure, symbols of Christianity to move you from believing to letting go of a certain level of belief and letting go of that level. And then it moved you into the Course teachings, and you let go of another level, and you were able to then start touching this non-dual path. It feels to me more like a shedding of beliefs than an adding of anything
Hmm.
to come back to the truth, right? Does that?
Yeah, the beliefs are helpful for a while, and then they go away because it's knowing the self is not about believing anything. Knowing the self is knowing with certainty what you are. What shines through this bodysuit is what you are, and believing is not involved anymore. Believing is just the lower rung steps on a ladder that brings you to the place of knowing. And one of the things, what's funny about moving from the course to Muji is that Muji also had an early upbringing, a Bible. His mother was a Seventh Day Adventist, and she raised him with Bible stories. So sometimes when I would be with Muji, there'd be 50 or 75 of us sitting around in Sahaja, usually sitting on the ground, and him sitting on a rock, like you would imagine the disciples for Jesus would be, and he would give Bible parables verbatim, and it was just like, oh my God, this must have been just what it was like to be with Jesus, because Muji's a great storyteller, as if you know him, most of you would know. And so he was able to bring to life the example or the experience of what it was like, what it was probably like to be with Jesus 2,000 years ago. And I think it's interesting that he went from Christianity to fundamentalist Christianity to mysticism to being drawn over to India to meet his guru, Papaji.
All right. So now we're here, or we're getting closer to here, because for a while, I don't know, would you ever call yourself a Rupert Spira fundamentalist? Did you ever consider? I
No,
I don't think so, right? And yet
no.
you did get, something clicked when you really started to work with him and his teachings. Do you want to talk about that before we move into where we are now with the living in oneness experience?
Hmm. That's a good question. I think that's a great question because I don't know any Rupert Spira isms or followers that would say that they're following his. Well, I guess I do know people that say they're following his teaching, but he's pointing to something else. He's pointing not to an idea, he's pointing to a direct experience. And when you point to a direct experience, you're no longer pointing to the idea. You're pointing to the nature of what you are. And I mean, I could be a Muji devotee and decided that a guru wasn't didn't resonate with me. And one day, sitting in my living room with my wife Lisa, I was just looking at something that came across my computer, and there was something that was in science and non-duality that posed some questions of the speakers, the same question for the speakers, and Rupert was one of the speakers. And as soon as he started talking, I went, "Who is this guy?" And and the way he was wordsmithing or languaging what he was talking about, it just felt like I want to know more. So I immediately, set the courses or set the course and set Muji aside, and I'm focused on Rupert. and what he's talking about, and he's really talking about what Bill Thetford, one of the scribes of the course, said early on when he started typing the content of A Course in Miracles, that A Course in Miracles is the Western version of Advaita Vedanta. And Muji was an Advaita master. That's what drew me to him. He wasn't as clear because he really was. He wasn't as clear languaging his teaching. He was mostly teaching about the knowing the self, and one who knows this presence needs look no further. They have found what they've always been seeking, and it's not outside of them. And so Muji points to you to the true self, essential self, in a different kind of a way, where Rupert speaks more to the direct experience of having the experience for yourself. And so Rupert would say he would invite his students to investigate for themselves. Let me just ask you a question, he would say. Are you aware right now? Are you aware? And he would give the pause, the moment for the mind to look for that experience. And the mind can't find the experience. Only awareness can find the experience. So immediately, by looking for the answer to that question, one comes into direct connection to their essential self. One comes into the direct experience of what Jesus was pointing to when he says, I am one with the Father and you're one with me. And A Course in Miracles says that I am one self united with my Creator. And many of the workbook lessons say, I am as God created me. So that's two. And then Muji is saying, you are the self. You are the true self. And then here's Rupert pointing to the same thing, only not as a concept, but pause and ask yourself, what is it that is aware of this experience? And when I heard it put that way, when I saw I am. I saw that, oh my God, I am. And I'd seen it. I'd seen glimpses of it through the teaching of Jesus. I saw glimpses of it with A Course in Miracles, and I saw glimpses of it with Muji. I heard it being directed in a different way from Rupert, and from that I had the direct experience that I'd always been looking for. And it took about 4 years for me to realize that I had self-realized.
To breathe, because she took me right back there. And now I have to remember how to speak again. I'm determined. There's something in me determined to continue on the story and not just go into the experience. There seems to be value, because what happened next, because we're working together by now, right? You were just learning about Rupert, I think, when we began working together, because we were Teachers of God Foundation at the time when we started working together was really pure course, but quickly moved to something else. For a while, it appeared that you put the course down, Course in Miracles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you were living with someone who refused to put the course down, who said the course is mine. And so there seemed to be a disconnect. And to get to the end story, which I think most of us already know, at some point, you said, oh, wait a minute, there isn't a conflict. And so did Lisa. You guys sort of came to the middle way, or whatever you want to call it. But there was this period of time, and I don't know if there feels like there's something to complete, not to complete the story, but to continue this story. There was this period of time where you put the course down. You can almost say, you decided reject is maybe not the right word, but you put it down, didn't want to talk about it. And you were living in a home with one of the, premier Course in Miracles teachers who didn't want to talk about the non-dual path. And I'm curious if there's anything coming through you right now that you want to share about, maybe less about the conflict and more about the transition into where we are right now with what the living in oneness experience is has morphed into being.
Hmm. Well, there wasn't. Uh, I attempted to share some of the non-dual ideas with the Teachers of God Foundation, with the Friday group that we were leading, with Lisa, but there was a lot of resistance to that, and I just paused it. I didn't stop following the course. I love the course, and I loved it then. I just didn't understand how we were calling it a non-dual teaching when it wasn't. I didn't understand how. So I did the non-dual. I did the. Uh, I did presentations like titles that would be called Beyond A Course in Miracles, because I knew by then, by 2016, I knew that the course wasn't it. It wasn't all of it. It was a lot of it, and it got me where I was, but I saw too many people that were stuck in the concepts of the course while I was beginning to have the direct experience, and yet I didn't need to fix or change any of them, and I didn't need to push like you would Christianity or some other teaching. I didn't need to push a teaching on them. I just merely kept following Muji, following Rupert. I started going to Rupert Spira retreats, and I was still interested in the Course in Miracles. So I started noticing that when I would read workbook lessons, I was retranslating the Christian language in the Course to fit a direct experience understanding. And that just sort of started happening. And so I started recording those those reinterpretations. I wasn't planning on posting them anywhere. I wasn't planning on making them a teaching of their own. And at the same time, I started going to Rupert Spira retreats, and then I began offering Rupert Spira book studies, free book studies. I've been doing those for about 4 years now. And through that, I still had a connection with the Course, because I just knew there was a way to integrate, to bridge those two teachings so that Course students could have what I was now having and not have to let go of the Course. And I could have what I'm having and still have my love for the Course, my appreciation for all my friends and the things they're following, and also follow a new love that I had, which was offering book studies for people around the world, which I'm still doing today with the Rupert Spira book study.
Yeah. There's what, 1,500 people that have registered for the current book study, I think.
Oh, nearly
Maybe
2,000.
2,000.
Yeah,
And there's
it's a lot.
also a steadily increasing population of people that tune in and listen to your retranslations or your teachings of A Course in Miracles from this new awareness.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's pretty easy. I'm sure wherever you're listening or watching us from, there is a link somewhere so you could access these teachings. It's um, the truth of who you are has brought you on such a unique journey that has enabled your bodysuit. You like to call it a bodysuit. Anyone who knows and loves you knows that this is the bill-free bodysuit, has been
Mm-hmm.
very uniquely trained now to connect with all these different traditions and bring them all into the space of pointing back to the self. And so there is a, a general, ever increasing kind of following. I know I'm going to get the numbers wrong, and I'm not going to go look. There's quite a few people that are in your non-dual 365 course, and it's all this, your book study and your translations, they're all just gifts of love. They're not being sold. It's not like a worldly gift. It's more of a opening and an awareness and a pointing back to the truth. So um getting a little teary because that's all there. Anyone who's listening to us, whether they've just met you or they're meeting you for the first time, it's so cool to know that all of these tools are right there. People just have to tap into it. The other thing, though, that is extraordinarily exciting that you and I are both a part of is this living in oneness experience. And that's a group of several hundred people right now um, that have said yes to a more specific, more focused study of what happens when you merge the teachings that have come through Rupert Spira and A Course in Miracles as they come through you and Lisa. And I would love for you, I'm looking at the time because I'm also going to ask if you wouldn't mind blessing everyone who's listening with an experience. But first, I would love to hear whatever it is you want to share, either about how that began, or your dreams for it, or who you think it's for, or anything you want to say about the living in oneness experience more specifically.
Well, the living in oneness experience, like the other teachings, like the non-dual interpretations of A Course in Miracles, and the experience that has been happening to this bodysuit, to Bill Free, and also to Lisa Natoli. I've watched her completely change in the last 4 years or three and a half years. She's just really, and without me trying to push anything on her, because if you know Lisa, she's just who she is, very authentic and very devoted to Course in Miracles. And I am not diminishing A Course in Miracles at all. I will tell you that there's a way, organically, we've discovered that there's a way to bridge the two teachings of A Course in Miracles and the pointing of Advaita Vedanta through Rupert Spira or Francis Lucille or John Klein, Krishna Menon, and just all of these great teachers that they're speaking what the Course in Miracles is pointing to, and they're offering it, and we're offering it as a direct experience. So there's a lot of people that are non-dual that have heard about the Course, and they're kind of interested in it, and we offer it in a way where you don't lose or walk away from your non-dual teaching, and you can still have the beautiful poetry and language that the Course in Miracles offers. And we present it in a way that you can have the experience of A Course in Miracles through a non-dual filter. And we do it the other way with A Course in Miracles for students who love the Course and don't want to just be great Course students, but they want to wake up. They want to wake up. And we want people to wake up. We don't want them to just know about the Course and have, be able to have this intellectual understanding of the concepts and to be great teachers. We want them to have the direct experience that Jesus was pointing to 2,000 years ago, Buddha was pointing to, all the great masters, Ramana Maharshi, Papaji, Muji, Rupert, all of these great teachers. And there's a lot of women teachers today too, that like Helen Hamilton and Jack O'Keefe and beautiful teachers around the world that are pointing to the same thing. And when you and I started, I sort of had this pull to want to share these ideas in a bridged way with our audience that had already grown to 20 plus thousand at the time. I wanted to share with them this new understanding and experience that Lisa and I were having, which is Course in Miracles students awakening to the direct experience as awareness, as aware presence, not just talking about it and loving the concepts, but having the direct experience of what the Course terms living in the real world experience. And when you unpack those ideas in a way that you can bring it in on a weekly basis, which is what we did with the Living in Oneness experience, we've seen dozens, if not more than 100 people begin to have awakening experiences for the first time. Course in Miracles students waking up and being able to say, yeah, I'm living an awakening experience. And I call it awakening awareness. That's what because that's what it is. It's awakening awareness, living as the Holy Spirit description from A Course in Miracles. You're a living embodiment of the Holy Spirit in a bodysuit. And now you can have the direct experience for yourself of living a life of inner peace. Not that conflict doesn't come and go, but it doesn't stay long. And when it does come, you have tools and you have a presence that just allows it to happen. And you don't get sucked into it. You don't get drawn in to a reaction to an experience. You watch it unfold, and inner peace becomes your new default.
A feeling an opening and a peace, and just the impulse to just invite anyone who is not yet a member of our community to become a member of our community, because there's just so much going on. And now it's interesting that we've spent about an hour together. It's linear time is an interesting thing. I'll have friends in the community that will be upset with me if I don't ask you for just a few minutes of an experience. If you don't mind, you walk people through it almost every day. I wonder if you take a few minutes now and just show our listeners how easy it is to connect with the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, it is that easy. It is closer to us. Our aware self, the awareness of love's presence, is as close to us as our breath. In fact, it is aware of our breath. What is aware of our experience is the I am that I am. And if you're listening to this broadcast or you're watching the broadcast, just allow yourself to pause for a moment. Just pause as awareness. And if I ask you, are you aware of this experience? Without answering the question, just invite yourself to give your attention on that question. Are you aware right now? Without using memory, without the use of memory in this awareness. Tell us about yourself. Right there. Right there. We just stopped the mind that thought it was a bodysuit, a person. When you ask the question without the use of memory, tell us about yourself. You realize there's nothing to say, and yet there's still a presence. There's still the presence of awareness. It's present in every moment. You cannot have an experience that awareness is not present. Letting the mind know that the experience is occurring, awareness is always here. And if I ask you to close your eyes and ask the question again, what is it that's aware of this experience? Being aware of being aware. There's an awareness of being aware, and yet this awareness is not an object. This awareness, it doesn't come and go. It's aware of thoughts that come and go. It's aware of sensations in the bodysuit, whether it's the weight of our bottom sitting on the chair or the weight of an elbow on an arm piece, or like me, I have my eyes closed and I have hand on heart. There's an awareness of something being touched. And if we're 6 months or 3 months old and we're aware of sensation, we couldn't tell you what a body part is. We couldn't tell you where the sensation is because we don't have a name for the heart or the chest yet. And yet this awareness that's aware of that experience, as 3 months old, as 3 years old, the awareness of our experience at 10 years and 20 years, and the age that we are in the bodysuit right now, that same awareness is the same awareness that was aware of experience before it knew the name of the experience. It's the unchanged presence of awareness. And if I invite you to ask, does this awareness that you're experiencing right now, does it have an age? It only takes a second to investigate that. Does this awareness have a skin color? Again, it only takes a second. Does this awareness have a gender? we have established that this awareness right here is ageless, genderless. It's just always present. And we have discovered through this investigation that this awareness is not even time-based. So we are resting right now in awareness of love's presence. This is love's presence that awareness is experiencing, and it's not an object. It doesn't come and go, it just is. And this is the infinite presence of I am. When you use those two words together, I am, and our attention is on this idea, this experience becomes real and direct. This is your essential nature. This never changes, doesn't matter how old or what happens to the bodysuit. This awareness remains as it always is, unchanged. This is the presence of God right here. And as I invite you to open your eyes from this place of awareness, now include all of the objects of experience, everything that the body's eyes land on, just include it. It's still included in this awareness, this aware presence. And you could also give the name of this awareness the name holiness. And your holiness, your awareness envelops everything that the body's eyes sees and all experiences that this bodysuit seems to have. All experiences are included in the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural state. And you have access to this 24/7. My recommendation is short moments of awareness many times becomes a new default, and you are a living embodiment of awareness.
And with that, unless there's something else you'd like to say, Bill, I'm inspired to leave our listeners in this space with the invitation, if they have the time, to just pause here for as long as they'd like, really. I have nothing more to share or add than the fact that I love us all, and I'm just so grateful for this time. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, blessings to all of you.